I'm a therapist. I've seen all kinds of things in my years of practice. Patients dealing with anxiety, depression, trauma, grief. I've learned to read between the lines to detect the subtle signs of a mind under pressure. I thought I knew what to expect when Mike came to me. He was a new patient, just another case to add to my roster, but something about him felt off from the start. He was jittery, constantly fidgeting, his eyes darting around the room like he couldn't focus on anything. He told me he was seeing things, people who weren't really there, and that it was starting to consume him. I could tell he was scared, but there was something about his fear that didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just paranoia. It was like he was trying to tell me something I couldn't quite grasp. At first, I chalked it up to his condition. Patients like Mike often have trouble distinguishing between what's real and what's not. But then things started to happen. I'd be out at the grocery store, and I'd catch a glimpse of someone in the crowd, and for a moment, I could swear it was Mike. A couple of days later, I saw him again at the park, standing just a few feet away, staring at me. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just coincidence, but then it got worse. I started noticing him outside my office, standing in the parking lot, just watching. Every time I stepped outside, he was there, always a little too close. It was like he was following me, like he knew where I'd be before I even knew. And the worst part was, he started talking about my family, my wife, my kid, little details, things he couldn't have known. It made my skin crawl. I tried to remain professional, to stay calm, but it was hard. I found myself checking over my shoulder, locking my doors, wondering if he was watching me even when I couldn't see him. My wife noticed it too. I'd come home late, my nerves frayed, and she'd ask what was wrong. I'd tell her it was nothing, just a difficult case, but she could tell something was off. I kept it together for her sake, but inside I was starting to crack. Then one night, everything changed. I came home late from work, exhausted, thinking about the next session with Mike. I walked into the house, expecting the usual calm after a long day, but when I stepped inside, something was wrong. The door was ajar, the house too quiet, my heart started to race. I called out for my wife, but there was no answer. I turned the corner to the living room and froze. There, on the floor, was my wife, blood staining the carpet. She was still breathing, but just barely. My stomach twisted. I called 911, my hands shaking, but something was missing. My son, he was gone. There was no sign of him, no indication of where he might have gone. The police arrived, but they didn't find any evidence of forced entry. No one had broken into the house. It was like my family had been torn apart from the inside out. But as I stood there, watching them search for clues, one thing was clear. The only possible explanation was Mike. The things he'd said to me about my family, about my life, he knew too much. I thought maybe he'd come into the house, hurt my wife, taken my son. But the more I thought about it, the more I wondered if I was wrong. What if Mike wasn't the one who had done this? What if I was the one who had caused it all? I started to question everything. I'd heard strange noises in the night, footsteps when I was alone, whispers when no one was around. I couldn't tell if it was Mike stalking me or if it was my mind playing tricks. I'd catch glimpses of shadows, faces in the reflection of windows, but when I turned, there was nothing there. The walls of my own mind were closing in on me, and I couldn't escape. I thought about going to the police, about telling them everything I suspected, but how could I? Who would believe me? I'm a therapist. I'm supposed to know what's real and what isn't. But I'm losing my grip on reality, and I don't know if I can stop it before it takes everything from me. The terror isn't just what happened to my family, it's that I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know if Mike is stalking me or if I'm just losing my mind. And if it's the latter, then how do I even begin to trust myself again? The worst part is that I may never know the answer.